My eyes have gone to the dogs. This looked like a vibe. How weird and interesting is that? 100% viscose. The Chinese lied to me. You're not always going to win. Oh, thank you for gracing me with your presence. We've got to learn how to buy better clothes. Let's have a chat. Let's have a chat about clothing and how to thrift the best. How to shop for quality clothing. How to recognize poor versus quality in clothing. That's what we're going to cover. How to identify quality. How to check the linen fabric quality. Fashion design is all about fabrics, is it? The best fabrics for your wardrobe and for you. Do you know what those are? If you don't, you better carry on watching. The pros and cons of common fabrics. The difference between natural, synthetic, and semi-synthetic. Do you know what those are? I didn't before I did some research on this. Fabric blends. I'm going to explain them to you as best I can. And what not to buy. Do not buy these fabrics. Do not buy these items under any circumstance. So I asked ChatGPT. I said, ChatGPT, give me brands to look out for. Look out for these labels. Made in USA. So that's Levi's, Wrangler, Lee, Carhartt, Dickies, Pendleton, LL Bean, Fry, Filson, and Champion. Second category, made in the UK. Barber, Burberry, why does this have to be so hard? Doc Martens, Clarks, Dax, Churches, John Lobb, and Vivienne Westwood. Third category, made in Italy. We love the Italians, don't we? They know how to make clothes. Gucci, Prada, Armani, Versace, Salvatore Ferragamo, Tod's, Max Mara, Bottega Veneta, Brunello Cucinelli, and Missoni. Fourth category is made in Scotland. Look for items made in Scotland. Pringle of Scotland, Johnson's of Elgin, Lyle and Scott, Harris Tweed, Beggs of Ayr. What is on with these Scottish people? My roots come from there. I have very, very old roots in Scotland. Then they came down to South Africa and populated the earth, as we did. And Valentine. Now, in particular, for women's fashion, the labels. Made in USA, category 1, is Eileen Fisher, Diane von Furstenberg, or also known as DVF. Anthropologie, like Maeve, Pilcrow, etc. Reformation and Calvin Klein. Is made in the UK, the women's labels to look out for. Whistles, Phase 8, Ghost, London, Toast, and Bowden. And then third category, made in Italy, for the women's clothing. Max Mara, Marella, Pinko, Patricia Pepe, and Luisa Spagnoli. Fourth category, made in Scotland for women's labels. Pringle of Scotland and Hawiko. I obviously was digging more. I don't want just from the UK and the US and Italy and that. I want maybe some of the Japanese style, some of the Eastern stuff. Give me some labels from the East. So, Muji is a Japanese minimalist aesthetic. Good. Everlane, COS, H&M, Mango, Latif, Cotton, Love Bonito, The North Face, Timberland, J. Crew, Lacoste, Tommy Hilfiger, Esprit, and Benetton. Now, if we are looking for vintage in particular, we need to look for labels that are from 2001 and earlier. They often have a metal zipper, and on the label itself it's embroidered, but I'm going to get into that. I'm just slowly warming up into this marathon of an explanation of what to buy. So hang in there. Do the fibers you need to look for. So you've got your natural fibers. So that's the cotton and the wool and the silk, linen, Angora, I think as well. Then you get the new natural ones. They have better properties because they tend not to crease so much. And they are made from natural materials. So you get modal, which is better than cotton. Viscose, this is made from wood. crushed wood. And tencel, which is made from bamboo. Are they really natural? Is it a conspiracy? Maybe it's a conspiracy. Let's look at the fibers that are synthetic now. Synthetic fibers, we get acetate. You must stay away from that. It's not breathable. You get rayon, which in the old days and sometimes now was used in place of silk. Nylon, acrylic. Back in the 50s and 60s, that was a substitute for wool. I think I might be wearing acrylic now. It's so soft and comfortable. It smells good. Polyamide. Elethane. Was it elethane, like a plasticky material that they'd use to waterproof things? I'm not sure. What does it say? It was great to make because a cotton fabric or denim fabric would bounce back after you have moved. So they used to use elethane in cotton and denim to make it bounce. Okay, so maybe it wasn't a waterproofing thing. Maybe there was this plain old plastic liner inside a garment would make it waterproof in the old days. Let's just take a little bit of a brain break here. You can have a look at some of the footage from my city, Port Elizabeth. Now, up to the next thing. High quality clothes. We get 3 categories. Okay, so you've got to think about 3 things. What is it made of? How well is it made? And how well it wears over time. That's how you know that it's quality. So let's dive deep into the history of manufacturing and fashion. You can skip ahead if this is of no interest to you, but I'm not going to make it long. I'm not going to make it laborious and boring. Let's try and keep it snappy. So synthetic fibers only started coming out in the 1935. So then that's when they started deriving materials from fossil fuels and crude oils, like polyamide, the fibers are all plastic. And then you'd get polyester and acrylic. So polyamide, polyester, and acrylic were all made from 1935 onwards. And very silky, very smooth, and they resembled silk, but don't be misled. In the 1950s, the women started wanting to work now because they didn't want to be housewives anymore. So they just really didn't want to iron. I mean, who wants to iron? No one likes ironing. I don't. If something needs a lot of ironing, I probably won't keep it in my closet for long. And so do most people. They don't want to keep things that they have to iron all the time. That's why they started making these garments out of polyester, acrylic, and polyamide. It resembled silk. It was light, and it didn't need to be ironed. In 1960, we had the plastic fantastic phase. So plastic became really big then. I'm sure that's when Tupperware made its name and went, wow. I can remember my grandmother having her little Tupperware parties. In the 1960s, plastic became cheaper to make, or it was cheaper to make clothing with plastic than it was to make it with cotton. So the 1960s, we also had the sportswear, the lycra, the spandex. So fitness in the 1960s started becoming really big, and people wanted to be able to move and be comfortable and have something like that showed the muscles and showed all their hard work. Only problem with these was that it didn't absorb sweat, so you would end up. I once had a guy. I used to go and cycle. I used to spin every morning before I had my kids. Anyway, and I had this guy that always chose to sit next to me. No matter how much I tried to avoid him at every spinning session, there he was. And his shoes, there was always a smell coming off him. I eventually realized it was his shoes. Why not wear cotton socks or something? It was the most horrendous smell. So I can just imagine all this lycra going around in the 1960s and the sweaty men when it was in. I mean, you look at Borat with that outfit of his, can you imagine the men in the 1960s like prancing around in their little Borat outfits made of lycra and sweating? Thank goodness that's over. The thing with lycra and spandex was that it's a very strong material and it can withstand a lot of friction and a lot of movement and a lot of stretching, a lot of repetitive movements, all needed in exercise, which is why people spent money on them. Bad quality polyester saturates the market now in fast fashion. And I am definitely going to show you some examples of vintage polyester. It is very different to the polyester you find now when you buy something from Shein or Temu. The old type of polyester, the one that was made in the 40s and 50s, when these dresses were probably made, the polyester wasn't that smooth polyester that you get, like this. This is the new polyester, smooth. shiny a bit. That's the new polyester. Look, if you compare it to the old polyester, there is like a texture to it. If you look up very close, look at that. I don't know what they were doing with it. Have a look through if you can see through. Can you see? Wow, this is beautifully made. Look here. Look at the way it flows. Polyester doesn't do this. The new polyester. Look how it dances on the body. Okay guys, I'm officially absolutely blown away by this. So the polyester's problem, and I think they've tried to start adding things to polyester to stop this, but back in the 1960s, the problem was that it trapped the moisture, your skin couldn't breathe, and then obviously we had the odors. Let's go on to the next category, which is the natural fibers. So we've got cotton, cashmere, linen, wool, silk, and hemp. I'm going to be putting up some pictures here. You've got cotton, and cotton is breathable, it's durable, it's anti-static, and your high-end cottons are the Pima cotton, which is from USA and Peru and Australia. You get the Supima cotton, that's from the UK, and then you get the Egyptian cotton, which is obviously from Egypt. And the reason why that cotton is so good is because of the Nile and the minerals from the ground that cotton grows from makes this cotton absolutely exquisite. The problem is, Egyptian cotton isn't always Egyptian cotton. You have to really know the label. So make sure you see what the real label is for Egyptian cotton, because some people are calling normal cotton Egyptian cotton, or they have a small amount of Egyptian cotton and the rest is something else. So watch out for that. So you get subcategories of cotton. You get flannel cotton. So those are those cool shirts that you wear when you go out to a braai or a barbecue, or when you go out hunting. You know, the hunting guys, they like to wear flannel with their caps and their guns. It's soft and it's like a brush type of cotton. The second type of cotton, which is your jean and your denim, that's usually 100% cotton, but these days they make it about 98% cotton and 2% spandex, just to give it a little bit of breathing room. And it makes it more comfortable. People prefer it. You get another type of cotton, which is canvas, and that's usually used in shoes and some hiking equipment, sometimes bags, hats. And then you get corduroy. I do have a pair of cotton corduroy pants. It's got a little bit of elastine in it, but those are the vintage good ones. And you know, if you're not going to sweat and smell in them. You don't want a pair of pants that stink. No. Especially if they're tight. Tight corduroy flared pants. Yes. And the next cotton you get is called poplin cotton, and it's soft and it's got a bit of a sheen. The next category of organic or natural materials or natural fibers is your cashmere. I have 1 or 2 cashmere items, and wow, it's soft and luxurious, and it's from the undercoat of the cashmere and goats. And the finer the hairs of the cashmere, the higher the quality of the cashmere. So, showing you pictures. All natural fibers will pull. And it's got something to do with the fact that the ends come off and they can break quite easily, and then they tend to pull. Natural fibers tend to rub together. So you'll find like underneath your armpits, anywhere where you rub or you have more friction on your garment. If it's a natural garment, then those fibers will rub against each other and pull. So if your garment is pulling, it means there is natural fiber in it. The next category of natural fibers is wool. So we know wool is from sheep. It's a lot stronger and more durable than cashmere. Wool also contains lanolin, which is that waxy material on a sheep's coat that keeps it from getting wet or cold when the weather's not great outside. Cashmere doesn't have that, so that's why cashmere feels so much softer. You get 3 types of wool. You get sheep's wool, which has more of a coarse feeling. You get lamb's wool, which is softer, and the fibers are also much softer and thinner. And then you get merino wool. Now I have a merino wool jersey that I can wear straight on my skin. I wear it as an undergarment for almost everything in the wintertime. It's like a second skin. It is so soft. Whereas other woolen items will sometimes be itchy or irritating on some people's skin. So if you have a very sensitive skin, then your merino wool is the one to go for. The merino wool is also the most expensive type of wool. Now we're getting into the next category, which is mohair and alpaca. You get that type of wool from Angora goats. Well, it's not wool, is it? It's a type of natural fiber. So it's a natural fiber, just like cashmere, cotton, and wool. It's soft and it's durable. It's naturally elastic, and it's resistant to wrinkles, lightweight. It's also very expensive. It has a bit of a fluffy texture. I had a mohair scarf once that I ended up giving away. It was so itchy, but they're saying the less quality of an item of mohair that you have, the more itchy it will be. It's got something to do with the short fibers in the threads. The lower quality mohair is not only itchy, but it will shed. Alpaca is similar to cashmere. It's very soft and smooth. It's very fluffy. It's also warmer than wool. So we've talked about the textile part of the garment. So we've talked about the wool, the cashmere, the cotton, the alpaca, the building blocks of any garment. But for a quality garment, we also need good construction. And I can tell you, I have got some vintage items. The construction of those garments are just next level. You could see people really, there was so much pride in what they were making. And it's an absolute joy to wear those vintage items. What makes an item well constructed? The fit and the drape, how it looks, how it feels, and you should feel comfortable in it. It shouldn't stretch weirdly in certain places. The shoulders should sit where they should. The stitching itself should be straight. I've got quite a few examples I'll show in this video of garments that I've tried that are vintage or just well manufactured, name brands, and you will soon see the difference when you are looking for quality items in the thrift store. There's certain things that are total giveaways for something that's a quality and what is fast fashion. Look at this! Look at the neck. Look at the way they've done the inside of the neck and the outside of the neck. Look at the way they've done the shoulders. Look inside here, how beautiful and neat that is. Straight lines. This is when they were making things, even this little frilly bit here. Look at the way they sewed that down. Straight stitches. Look at this overlocking here. But what I still can't get over is, as old as this thing is, look at that. They did a seam on the edge. And then that's the inside. Zigzag. The cotton is good quality. It's got a very fine, what do you call it? Thread count is very high. Look at this button. Now that's another way you can see quality. The buttonhole is very nicely finished and done. Tommy Hilfiger, so we know this is a great brand. And it's the old Tommy Hilfiger. At the back, it's got that V there, beautifully made. Look at these buttonholes. Okay? They even added different color thread. Look at the way this has been stitched on the inside. You cannot see an edge to this. They've done French seams here. Even on the front. This is quality. Everything is straight. The threads are lined up straight. And on the inside, can you see any open? No, look at the inside of this top. Nothing is left open. Everything has been closed off. Look, even the shoulders have been French seamed. Look at the way this has been made. Look at this. The double stitch there. Look at these button press on. Excellent quality. I would say stainless steel. Definitely buttons. Look at the inside. There is no, it's been French seamed. The only place you start seeing where your overlocker has gone is on the inside over there. But they finished it off so nicely over here. Look at that collar. Oh, it's a thing of beauty. Let's look at the shoulders even. Beautifully done. Beautifully done. Look how the seams are perfect, even with ribbed stretch material. Perfectly straight there. Look at the detail on the pockets. They've added there's nothing open. Look at that. It's been folded over and sewn somehow. Who knows? From the inside, I think. And then they sewed it all together. Look, here's the pocket. Can you pull the pocket out? No, you can't pull the pocket out because it's been sewn down on the bottom. This is what I'm talking about, quality. You can't see anything on the inside. It's been closed off as well. The quality of craftsmanship is just, when they made clothes, they made them good. Look at those straight seams. The way this one ends, so beautifully. We're talking designer brand there. There's your nice French seams. Everything is neatly tucked away underneath the lining. So beautifully done over there. Comes up to here. Look at the way they've done this extra. They've put this, tacked this on, but look at the extra they've put into that. That is your V. Look how beautifully that's been done. Look at these straps. That was plaited. I'm sure it was hand plaited. The fabric should flow when you're wearing it. It shouldn't stick to you. It should stretch and then go back to its original size when you've worn it. There should be no gaping at the buttonholes. And especially for dresses and skirts, try and get it cut on the bias. The second thing, after you've put it on and you've seen how does it fit and how does it drape, you've got to look at the seams, at the stitching. Are there loose threads that are unraveling? Are there flimsy or uneven seams? If you pull on the seam itself, if you go to, well, I can't show you on this, but if you pull on the seam itself, where the seam is and the two pieces of material come together, if you pull on them, can you see the light coming through? Can you see that they're not well stitched together? Also, your seams should sit flat. There shouldn't be any bunching or puckering between your seams. Another giveaway, and I'll show you in some videos, is that the pattern, if it's a garment with pattern on it, then where the seams are, then the patterns should line up. They should have taken the time to line up the patterns. Yes, look. Look at that. Those are all lining up. Look how it's French seams. Everybody, we have French seams. Your zips, when you zip it up and down, it should be smooth. There should be no jerkiness and no hard work at pulling up and pulling down the zip. It shouldn't feel like it's about to break. I've had some encounters with zips. And I can tell you now, when a zip breaks, to put a new zip in, not fun. A good quality garment will often also have hidden zips. There are some fashion labels that are using visible zips as a way to create contrast and interest in their garments. So I'm not saying that zips that you can see are a bad thing, but mostly your zip should be invisible. You shouldn't be able to see it. And you certainly shouldn't be able to see errors in the way that zip has been put in. Your buttons should line up perfectly. Your buttonholes should be beautifully finished off. There should be no threads coming off that. Your buttonholes should also be reinforced. Your buttonholes should be neatly done with no threads coming off them. Double button, look at the buttonholes. Another third button there. That is absolute craftsmanship. Have a look at buttons. Have they used cheap buttons? Or have they used buttons that it was actually thoughtfully put on there? They chose the button for that garment. Yes. Look at the buttons. Wicked. This is that good quality polyester. Okay, let me show it to you. Can you see? Listen to the sound of it. Look at the polyester. It's got a texture to it. Look at the way they've done those sleeves. Even this, it's got like a crepe look to it. That's when they say the polyester is vintage. Press studs in a belt. Look at the belt. That's wow. I can only appreciate this. Somebody was trying to tell a story through a piece of clothing here. This was someone who took time and care to make this. How unique and crazy is this? This is very, very 80s. Very 80s. The lining. Is it a synthetic polyester lining? Is it a cotton lining? Is it lined with silk? Oh, they're so luxurious. Do you want to see? Can I tell you some secrets about how they cut costs in production? Think about a pet peeve that I have. I have two pet peeves. Number one is fake pockets. Why? And the other thing I can't stand is when they have drawstrings that are also fake. Drives me mad. Fake buttons and fake buttonholes. What's the point? So the next thing I want to talk about is how can we shop better? And I've watched so many YouTube videos on this. And so I made a little list of what I thought would be useful for you. Check the inside label. It's sometimes different to the label that's visible. So on the back of your item, in the neck, it might say cotton jersey. But if you go into the side label, it will say cotton 40% and polyester 60%. So it's more honest on the inside label. So use your judgment. I mean, if something is too good to be true, if it is too cheap, it looks fantastic, it looks designer, but it looks cheap. I'm not saying it feels cheap, but it looks cheap. Just question that, because it could be too good to be true, and it usually is. Overall, when it comes to designers and designer wear, you do get what you pay for. But watch out for designer wear and what you're paying for it, because sometimes what you're paying for it isn't just the quality of the garment. It's the marketing, it's the advertising, it's everything else they have to spend. I mean, the perfume industry is one prime example. I went down a rabbit hole with that, where most perfumes are actually manufactured in 3 factories around the world. And it costs something like, it's very, very cheap, like 30 Rand for 10 mil to make a 10 mil or whatever, or to just ship it in. You could buy it if you wanted to make your own perfumes. But what you're paying for in a designer perfume is the label, the bottle, the advertising, the various actors and celebrities they've used to advertise this particular perfume, the coolness of the perfume. I mean, how you're going to buy that perfume and spend all that money because you don't want the same perfume in another little bottle that doesn't look designer and beautiful. But the actual contents of the perfume bottle is very, very cheap, even in designer perfumes. That's why Arabic perfume has gotten crazy, because people are realizing that, well, the Arabian culture, who loves perfumes, have realized that they can make perfumes cheaper. That was a long-winded explanation for being careful of designer labels. Take your time when you're buying. When you're thrifting, even if you're thrifting online, take your time. I find I will mark an item and I'll just leave it there for a week or two. I'll heart it on Yaga. And then after a week or two, if I go back and I go, yes, I still want that, then it's time to buy. But just buying randomly is what's going to end up cluttering up your closet with things that don't make any sense to you. It did at the time, but when you look back now, you're like, why did I buy that? I guess at the end of the day, to have a high quality cupboard is going to take you years. It's not something that happens overnight. And especially if you're wanting something vintage or quirky, those items will take time to source and to find. And you will buy items that you think are absolutely amazing, but when you wear them, they're not you. I'm finding with myself that I will buy items that I think, oh, it's amazing, yes. And I'll wear it a few times and I'll just, it's not really me. And so I just resell and then buy something else. There are certainly items in my cupboard I will never let go of, but it was a trial and error, buying, selling. Another thing to look out for when you are trying to find a quality wardrobe is to look for specialist retailers. Look for retailers that only focus on denim or only focus on leather goods, instead of going for a name brand like Tommy Hilfiger or whatever it is. Look for a brand that, if you are specifically looking for a specific leather jacket or a vintage coat or whatever, go and look for those particular brands that was all that they made. Pringle of Scotland, for instance, they specialized in knits. So if you buy something from them that is a knit, then you know that they spend a lot of time researching how to make good knits. And then to the end of the section, I think it's very true what they say. Even if the fiber content isn't perfect, even if you're not wearing silk or cashmere, was it made well? Was it constructed well? Construction of a garment is almost more important than the fabric and the fiber content. Always bear that in mind. Here are a few more tips. So I just sporadically picked up little tips as I was watching YouTube videos and reading up online. So it might come out as a bit random, but they're all little points that are important, that I felt was important. Be wary of serged edges. They will pull apart fast. So what they're saying there is, if you only have a serged edge, so they haven't done a straight stitch and then a serged edge, all that they've done was serge the edge. That is not secure enough. So when you're looking at the seams, make sure it's not only serged, but it is also stitched with a single stitch before the serge. The serge is just there to make sure it doesn't unravel. You actually do need the single stitch. A serged edge without a seam. Let's talk about viscose and rayon and how it replaced silk. It was made to mimic silk. Getting new fibers like modal, which is a modern type of rayon, tencel and lyocell, which are also modern types of silk fabrics. They are a lot stronger when they're wet, whereas silk is not as strong when it's wet. So viscose and rayon, they weaken when they are wet. Modal and tencel and lyocell are better than silk. And here are the reasons. I can't even comprehend how they could be better, but this is according to what I've been researching. It's easier to look after, and they wash well and they last longer. So if you can get your hands on modal, tencel, or lyocell, they're a good fiber, but obviously depending on the source. They're almost a better fiber than buying something that's silk. And certainly don't buy rayon or viscose if you're wanting something silky. Let's move on to polyester. What are the pros and the cons of polyester? Why did it even come along? So we already know, we've already spoken about polyester, that the reason why these type of garments started being made by this plasticky material in the 1950s was because women were going out to work after the war and they didn't want to iron. So the cons of polyester is that it traps in heat, it traps in sweat, it traps in smell. I think it can be quite static, so it will stick to everything. I think back in those days, a woman would always wear a little underdress of some sort that was made of natural fibers like silk, like a little silk cami or a silk slip, so that the polyester didn't stick to them in their stockings. Polyester also pulls in high friction areas. I thought polyester didn't pull, but I thought it was only natural fibers that pull. But polyester does pull in high friction areas, and that's a con. The pros is that it is very durable, very long lasting. I mean, we're going to have polyester items when the earth is no longer. It's going to be like those plastic bottles and plastic containers out on the beaches and in the landfills. There's going to be polyester garments. So it will last a long time. It's very difficult to break polyester. It dries very fast. It's wrinkle resistant. It's shield resistant. It holds dye very well. It is also one of the cheapest textiles to make. And that's why there's mass manufacturing of polyester garments. So if you're someone who wants a new garment every week, then this is why fast fashion is working. It's for that dopamine hit when people want to buy. And then they get a whole bunch of polyester items that they'll end up tossing out because it just doesn't feel nice to wear. It might last your whole life, but it doesn't feel nice to wear. Acrylic came in to replace wool in the 1940s and 50s. This is, I think, acrylic. It is very soft. It is durable as well. They were really made to last. I mean, a lot of the jerseys that you're going to find, the jumpers, the knits, vintage that you will find will often be made of acrylic. The nice thing about acrylics is that you can wash them by machine, whereas your wool, your cashmere, all of those, they would stretch, you would destroy them if you washed them by machine. Everything had to be hand washed. Only downside to acrylic is that it does pull. I've seen that. How many vintage jerseys have I been through where I have to sit with my little machine and get all the pulls off? So let's just look at what vintage clothes can teach us. What is it that vintage clothing had that we don't have anymore? I guess in some ways they tell a story. They're a time capsule of the fashion and what was cool back then in those days. The styles, the different cuts. I've got a whole list which I will share with you of how to know if it was from the 1910s, 1920s, 1930s. Every single decade had something different, whether it was color, whether it was a different collar, whether it was a different silhouette. Each decade had something different. I will show you a garment that I bought vintage. That is, the hem was hand sewn. Guys, look at this. It's hand sewn. The hem is hand sewn. If that's not vintage, I don't know what is. There was such an attention to detail, and there was such instead of your hem having a stitch all the way underneath it, all the way around it, someone took the time to hand stitch the hem so that no one had an idea that the hem had actually been stitched. It's invisible stitching when you do it by hand. They would hand roll the hem and then hand stitch the hem. The other thing we can learn about with vintage is that these designers were real artists. For them, a piece of clothing was like painting a piece of art. It was something that they would often make one, and they might make it in different sizes, but it wasn't seen as something that could be mass manufactured. Their items were seen as one of a kind. I love the stories that vintage clothing tells. Each piece of clothing has a story. Somebody made that. Somebody took the time and sat down at a sewing machine and made that, if it's handmade. But even if it was manufactured for a store of some kind, a department store, it still had someone that was hand sewing the hem and rolling the hem. It wasn't a machine making these clothes. These were people making these clothes. Their energy was put into the clothing and into the fabrics. Vintage clothing, the designs, the craftsmanship are just top tier. There's real pride that was taken in making these garments, and they were made to last. Not like today, where the whole idea is for something not to last very long so that you'll buy more. In those days, the driving force behind the item of clothing was to make sure that people would come back and buy because they knew that that was an item of clothing that was quality and that would last. They're not coming back to buy an item of clothing because their item of clothing is broken or the stitching has come undone. So 2001 always seems to be this date where most online commentators on vintage and clothing to look out for, they talk about 2001 being the year. I wonder why. It's pretty much the year anything from 2001 onwards is seen as not vintage, or the quality started going downhill from 2001, even designer labels. It seems that the storyline was starting to get pulled away from the clothing itself. They removed the storyline from the clothing, and then mass production started happening. And vintage was methodical, it was thought out, it was made with pride. It was made with longevity in mind. Can we actually find good polyester? Well, I'll show you in a couple of videos if I haven't put them in already, but I've found some amazing polyester outfits that are made with quality polyester. Now, what is quality polyester? Well, normal polyester has got a smoothness about it, the one that you see now, the cheap polyester. It's almost got a sheen to it, it's slippery. Whereas the old polyester it was almost like crepe, it had texture to it. You could almost see fibers in it. The old polyester also felt very silky, very flowing. The modern polyester is very stiff, it's staticky, it feels like plastic and it feels cheap, it's not breathable. The old polyester was breathable in some respects. I've seen some of the dresses and I have an example of one of the dresses that was made with the old polyester in it. There are gaps in between the threads. It's not like one sheet of fabric like the modern polyester. It's strange that the modern manufacturers, modern clothing manufacturers, they've started buying up all the vintage items, all the old well-made clothing styles, and they started copying them. But you could never copy what the vintage clothing manufacturers were doing because they took so much time. Rushing making an item just wasn't on their agenda. Making the most beautiful, perfect item was on their agenda. Whereas today, the faster you can make it and get it out into the shops, the better, the more money you're going to make. I was watching a YouTuber talk about Diane von Furstenberg from the 1980s, and her garments mostly were made of polyester. There were many wrap dresses, and they were high-end, high-quality, beautiful garments. Very expensive, made with lots of polyester, but they flowed. The fabric itself had a magic about it. I guess the secret, and what I want to leave you with in this video, is that you need to know that the majority of the most amazing quality items out there are you're going to find in your thrift shops. You're not going to find them in your local shopping center. Like, cars are not made like they used to be made. Tools are not made like they used to be made. And clothing is not made like it used to be made. Everything has been watered down. Has anything I've said to you today helped you identify your vintage item? Hope to see you soon on the next one, and I have no idea what fashion adventure we will have then, but hope to see you there.